I'm going to call to order the meeting of the Camarillo City Council for today, September 14th, 2022. And may we please have a roll call?
Councilmember Craven?
Here.
Councilmember Kildy?
Here.
Councilmember Tremblay? Vice Mayor Santangelo?
Here.
And Mayor Molche.
Present. And for the purposes of us meeting at 4:30, or calling to order the meeting at 4:30, is to go into closed session. I'm going to ask our city attorney to please reason the reasons for going to closed session.
Yes, we have two closed sessions today. The first one is a conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation. That's the initiation of litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D4. Number of potential cases is 1. Our second closed session is a conference with real property negotiator. The authority is Government Code Section 54956.8. The property is located at 4561 Valerio Way. The agency negotiators are listed in the agenda, as is the negotiating parties. Under negotiation are price and terms of payment.
Thank you very much. And do we have any public comment? And I see no one here. So at this time, we're going to recess into closed session, and we will be back for our 5 o'clock schedule.
Meeting of the Camarillo Sanitary District Board to order and ask the record to reflect that all board members are present. Mr. Mulchay, could you lead us in the pledge, please?
Everyone please stand. Right hand over your heart. And ready to begin.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Approval of the agenda. Are there any additions, deletions? Okay, I'll order it approved. Public comments. This is the time for people to speak to the board of the Camarillo Sanitary District on issues that are not on the agenda. Would anyone like to speak to us on an issue? I see no one coming forward. I have no cards, so we'll go on to the consent calendar. Second. Motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. Please vote. I'm going to assume that Mr. Kildee voted yes, and so that was unanimous approval. Discussion items? Oral communications? Well, I have one. I want to wish Mr. Kildee a happy birthday, but I'll spare you all from my singing.
Finally hit 21.
Okay. With no further business, this meeting is adjourned.
And I'm going to reconvene the meeting of the Camarillo City Council. Let the record reflect that all council members are still present. To approval agenda, do we have any amendments to this agenda? I will take the deafening silence as a no. We'll get down to consent calendar.
I'll move the approval.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Kildee, a second by Ms. Craven. Everyone please vote. That passes unanimously. It's going to take us down to public hearings, item number P. I have a quick announcement. On this item, I'm going to recuse myself. I have what might be a conflict of interest. The individual living at 35 Encino Avenue is a previous client of mine. So with that, I'm going to recuse myself. I'm going to turn the meeting over to Vice Mayor Santangelo, and then hopefully someone will come fetch me after we're done.
Okay, I see we have a staff report.
Turn that on.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Vice Mayor Santangelo, members of the City Council. The item for your consideration tonight is Annexation 114 and change of Zone 333 submitted by Jensen Design and Survey to annex 1,942.95 square feet of land and prezone the property to rural exclusive residential, 1 acre minimum lot size. With the annexation, a reorganization of districts will include annexation to the Camarillo Sanitary District and detachment from Ventura County Resource Conservation District, the Gold Coast Transit District, and Ventura County Service Area Number 32. This aerial map shows the location of the project site, which is north of Las Posas Road and Crestview Avenue. It's also just east of Valley Vista Drive at 35 Encino Avenue. The site is adjacent to, but outside the city limits. On this map, the red line denotes the current city limits. The project site is within the city's sphere of influence and Camarillo urban restriction boundary and is currently designated in the city's general plan as rural density residential, 2.5 units per acre maximum. The current county zoning of the property is rural exclusive 5 acre minimum lot size. The project proposes to prezone the site to rural exclusive residential 1 acre minimum lot size to match the existing zoning within the city to the west. This is a close-up view of the property. The applicant is proposing to annex a 5-foot strip of land approximately 389 feet in length, just north of Encino Avenue. According to the applicant, the annexation is being pursued in order to widen an existing 26-foot wide dirt driveway by 5 feet. The additional 5 feet is proposed to be picked up from the 5.6 acre property to the east, which is currently in the county. The widening of the driveway is necessary for the development of a 5.92 acre property in the county, in which there is a single-family house currently under construction. So this is that 5.92 acre property that needs the access. And they are getting that additional 5 feet to widen the driveway from this property. If the annexation is approved, the applicant will pursue with the county a lot line adjustment of the short segment of the driveway that is in the county to the north of the annexation area, which is right here. Also, following the annexation, a lot line adjustment will be recorded that shifts the existing lot line of the driveway to include the annexation area. So basically, you would just move the lot line over so that it is on the east side of this yellow line. The project site is proposed to be pre-zoned to the city's rural exclusive residential 1 acre minimum lot size zone, which will become the property zoning classification should the annexation be approved and recorded. Under City Council Policy 7.03, it is the policy of the city to pursue the annexation of properties adjacent to the city whenever it is reasonably feasible to do so. In accordance with this policy, staff mailed a letter to the property owners of 31 parcels in the county asking if they wanted to be included in the annexation. There were no property owners that pursued being included in the annexation. The proposed annexation and pre-zoning is in keeping with the guidelines for orderly development as adopted by Ventura County, LAFCO, and the city. And the annexation area is adjacent to the city limits. It's within the sphere of influence. It's within the city's curb, and it will not result in creating an unincorporated island. The proposed pre-zoning to the RE 1 acre zone is consistent with the current general plan land use designation of rural density residential. The project is categorically exempt from the provisions of CEQA Class 20, annexations of existing facilities and lots for exempt facilities, therefore no additional environmental review is necessary. In concluding this presentation, it is a recommendation of staff and the Planning Commission that the City Council requests a reading of the title of this ordinance, waive further reading, and introduce an ordinance for change of zone 333, and adopt a resolution approving annexation 114. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you. Do we have any questions?
I have a question.
Ken?
Yeah, thanks, Jackie. Just a couple of questions, just sort of my own feeling and education, quite frankly, on this. Let's see, so it's about almost 6 acres that we're talking about here?
The annexation area is actually only 1,942.95 square feet, and it's the little strip of land in yellow, so it's very small.
So is that even an acre? I mean, is it?
No.
No, okay. So how many units can the individual build on that?
None.
None.
No. They're only trying to pick up this annexation area to expand a driveway so that the property owner right here, who is building a house, can have the proper access that is needed. So apparently there is a requirement that in order for this property to be developed, they needed to widen that driveway. There's an existing driveway from Encino to this big piece of land. So they needed to widen that driveway by 5 feet. And so The way that they're going about it is they are requesting to annex 5 feet from this property owner into this property that is in the city, and then move the lot line to be coterminous with the new city boundary. I mean, that is a very roundabout way of achieving what they need for access, but such as other alternatives, like just requesting an easement from this property owner for that additional 5 feet. But from what we were told, the request is being made because this person didn't want to have several different easements from different property owners in order to get access. They would just essentially be getting an easement from this property owner, in which they already have a 26-foot easement. They would just be widening that existing easement by 5 more feet.
And if this is approved, then any expense that's incurred will be expended by the applicant. Is that correct?
Yes, they would be responsible for payment of all fees to LAFCO and the county.
And they're obviously aware of that?
Yes,
Okay,
they are.
okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, this is a public hearing, so I will open the public hearing. And I have one comment card, but if anybody would like to make a comment, please fill out a card. Nicole Garner?
Hello, my name is Nicole Garner. I am with Jensen Design and Survey, and we represent the applicant. I have no comments, but I'm here to answer any other questions if there are any.
Do we have any questions? Thank you, Nicole. Appreciate you coming. Would anybody else like to make a comment? Okay, I'll close the public hearing. Mr. Tremblay?
I was going to make a request for reading of the title of the ordinance. Would that be appropriate at this time?
Yes.
Request of a reading of the title of the ordinance.
This is ordinance number 1199, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Camarillo, pre-zoning certain real property to rural exclusive residential, 1 acre minimum lot size, RE 1 acre, zone for 1,942.95 square feet of land located at 35 Encino Avenue, portion of APN 152-0-150-315, further described as CZ333.
Madam Mayor, I would waive further reading and introduce an ordinance for change of zone CZ 333 and adopt a resolution approving an annexation A-114 as described in items 2 and 3 on the public hearing agenda.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Tremblay and a second by Mrs. Craven. Please vote. And that passes unanimously. And we'll go retrieve the mayor.
Do we have to adopt, or did we already do that? Do we have to adopt it, or maybe we already did that? Okay.
All right. We will take up our discussion items. Item Q, introduction of ordinance adopting 2022 revised building codes. How you doing?
Good. Honorable Mayor and City Council, what we have before you is an introduction of the adoption of the California Building Standards Code with our local amendments. Every 3 years, new model codes come out, and California State Health and Safety Code requires jurisdictions to enforce the latest editions of these various building standards, which requires us to adopt the codes and also our amendments. Come January 1st, when new codes take effect, Our old amendments, which we have already adopted, will disappear unless we put those amendments back into the new codes. So what we have proposed, we aren't proposing any new amendments. What we're proposing is just put the old amendments back into the new codes. So that include pool fencing, water conservation, foundation and grading requirements, pool design, and also adopting the International Property Maintenance Code for helps code enforcement enforce regulations, and our post-disaster safety assessment place cards, which gives us authority to put red tags, yellow tags in case of earthquakes or just unhabitable substandard structures. There's one thing I'd like to bring up on the new codes, which we can't change, but California is requiring all new single-family dwellings to be electric ready, which means all the panels will have to sustain all electric appliances. So developer can still put in gas appliances if they want to, but they'll also have to have everything pre-wired for electric. Well, that's pretty much what I got. We recommend that the council reads by title the ordinance and waive further reading and introduce the ordinance adopting certain codes by reference and set a public hearing adoption for October 12th, 2022. And I'm available for any questions.
Questions?
I don't have any.
No, we are silent up here. All right. With that, I will request a reading of the title.
Do I have to? This title's so long. All right. It's ordinance 2000. Take a deep breath. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Camarillo, California, amending Chapter 16.04 of the Camarillo Municipal Code and adopting by reference the following model codes into the Camarillo Municipal Code. 1, California Building Code Volumes 1 and 2, 2022 edition with appendices C, I, and J. 2, California Electrical Code 2022 edition. 3, California Plumbing Code 2022 edition with Appendix H. 4, California Mechanical Code 2022 edition. 5, International Property Maintenance Code 2021 edition. 6, California Administrative Code 2022 edition. 7, California Energy Code 2022 edition. 8, California Reference Standards 2022 edition. 9, California Existing Building Code 2022 edition. 10, California Residential Code 2022 edition with Appendix H. 11, California Green Building Standards Code 2022 edition, and making amendments based upon local climatic, topographic, and geographical conditions.
Madam Mr. Mayor?
Move to waive,
Oh, sorry. Although it may be rather anticlimactic, can we go ahead and make the, waive further reading and introduce an ordinance adopting certain codes by reference and set the matter for public hearing for October 12, 2022, as set
Second.
forth in items 2 and 3?
All right, thank you very much. I have a motion and a second. Please vote. And that passes unanimously. Takes us down to oral communications. First, we'll take up Drought Task Force. What we'll do is we'll do a Drought Task Force. We'll have everyone run down their updates if you want, and then we'll end with Charlotte and her historical, unless.
Do you want me to do my update too, or
Sure.
hold on to that, or?
No. Tony, we'll just start with you.
Okay,
Yeah, and then
okay, however you want.
we'll do your updates as well.
Okay, thanks. So on meetings attended, August 25, the Policy Committee with Mrs. Craven, also a Military Appreciation Mixer that evening at the Channel Islands Maritime Museum. On August 27th with the mayor, thank you, the grand opening of Battery Streak, and that was very fun. September 6th, the City Employee Appreciation Barbecue. On September 7th through 9, the League of Cities Conference in Long Beach, which I'll speak to in a minute. On September 9th, 2 committee meetings for Metrolink, the Executive Committee and the Contract Operations, Maintenance, and Safety Committee. On September 13th, Metrolink Ad Hoc Fuel Hedging Committee, and today, September 14th, the VCTC Admin Finance Committee, special meeting of that body. With respect to the League of Cities, better speak into the mic. I thought it was a valuable conference. I went to several presentations. I know my colleagues were at different presentations. The ones that I especially found interesting were, no surprise, the legal side on land use and CEQA, but also affordable housing, drafting covenants, supporting small businesses to raise community capital, secrets to, these are the titles of these discussions, secrets to building technology economies in quote-unquote underestimated cities. But I think the lessons learned in those can also apply here, because I don't think we're ever underestimated. Maybe we are. I don't think Camarillo is. Creative funding strategies for infrastructure renewal, and specifically with respect to energy infrastructure, focusing on the public-private partnerships side. And then finally, a really good session on street dining risks, because we know we're ultimately going to have to deal with whether to make more permanent the on-street dining. With that comes some concomitant responsibility to make sure that diners are safe. And was anybody else at that one? That was really interesting because it's rather sobering, the number of accidents that actually occur in on-street dining. And the speaker indicated that it's about 100 per day across the United States in terms of some forms of accidents. And so they had a very specific list of things to do for cities, including developing an approach that balances diner safety and economic concerns, because I think we're all, I can't speak for all, but I think we're all pretty interested in continuing with a form of outdoor dining, utilizing a permit process to include identification language and insurance requirements so the risk is transferred, closing streets or limiting outdoor dining to roadways with speed limits 30 miles per hour and below, utilizing crash-tested barriers to separate diners from moving vehicles. That's kind of a no-brainer, and I think we've done that with the water barriers, and then conducting regular inspections of outdoor dining installations. Anyway, I thought it was a good presentation and worth it, and I'll share it with Mr. Vaca and our city manager and assistant city manager. Two other things before I go to the water issues. One is Judy Beliciano, whose husband actually was a former city employee, is trying to form a group, a grandparents group, hoping to meet at the Camarillo Sheriff's Department to help with crime, and putting together a grandparents group to kind of advocate and speak to children about crime issues, and working with the police department on that. She asked, they're trying to put together a group to meet at the police department and trying to put something together. So from a public safety standpoint, that sounds really good. And forgive the very crude sheet that I put together, but if anybody is interested in that, we have grandparents out there. They can email Judy at gregandjudy, Judib, gregandjudyb@gmail.com. So that's my advertisement on that for the evening, but it looks like a good thing to do, and I wish them much success. Finally, I'd ask that we, before we go to talk about water, that we adjourn this evening's meeting in the memory of Raylene Manzer of Camarillo. Mrs. Manzer passed away on August 31 here in Camarillo. She was quite a citizen. Among other things, she taught for 33 years, and most of her career was at Cam Heights as a kindergarten teacher. And as her obituary said, she was honored during her tenure as Camarillo Heights Teacher of the Year, Pleasant Valley School District Teacher of the Year, Optimist Achievement in Education Award recipient, and Camarillo Chamber of Commerce Educator of the Year. In 2015, she went into the Ventura County Educators Hall of Fame. She and her husband were members of Camarillo United Methodist Church. She served the church in many capacities, and she served our community as well in many capacities, including on the Camarillo Arts Council, where she served as president during the time that Constitution Park Pavilion was funded and constructed. And she was also a member of the Board of Directors for the Pleasant Valley Historical Society. Both she and her husband were Don and Donia's of the Pleasant Valley Historical Society. So a life very well lived, an extraordinary amount of public service by Mrs. Manzer. So I would ask that we adjourn in her memory this
Say your
evening.
name one more time?
Pardon me?
What's her name one more time?
Raylene Ruth
Raylene.
Manzer. Raylene. Did I not pronounce it right? If I didn't pronounce it right the first time, I apologize. Raylene. Raelene. She was really a great citizen and a great public servant. So, with respect to water and the drought task force, up on the screen, thanks, Carrie, is this the, yeah. I have two things to report to you on, and thank you now for the agenda description that allows us to do that, because I know the city attorney was just doing his job last time when he stopped me in mid-stride on giving all of you a update on what's going on with the drought task force. We have those meetings monthly. And the first part of my report is on the progress on reducing imported water use and our area's progress. And remember that we, City of Camarillo, and also Camarosa Water District, which serves the east side of the city, are sub-agencies of the Callegas Municipal Water District, which is in itself a wholesaler taking water from the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, and specifically taking water from the State Water Project. So what we're talking about here is imported water use and water from the State Water Project, which, as we all know, in this second year of this, or in the second drought cycle, is really very, very limited. So what Metropolitan has done for the last few months is come up with what's called an agency-specific volumetric delivery limit for Callegas Municipal Water District, like with all the other wholesalers within our area of Metropolitan, which is called the State Water Project Dependent Area, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. And they calculated those volumetric limits. It's based on an equivalent share of what's called health and human safety water available from the state, which is roughly 55 gallons per capita per day. And remember that, because we may end up coming back to that, hopefully not, but at some point in the future in terms of discussing that, plus any additional water that Metropolitan can provide from state water. And it's offset by local supplies, but I won't go there because I'll end up geeking out on what, on the whole, how things are done formulaically. But the bottom line is the state is, or Met is tracking everybody's usage. So the first graph up there is for all, the top graph for all of these is what the agencies have been doing during September, during this month. And the second graph below is what they've been doing from June to December 2022, and the second graph is actually usually more illustrative. But for the state water, and remember that Metropolitan's program here is only in the area of Metropolitan Water District, the 30% area of Metropolitan Water District, which is what's called State Water Project Dependent. And therefore, this emergency water program is applying only in our areas, and that's about 6 million out of Metropolitan's roughly 19 million water customers. So, for that first graph, you see that all state water project dependent agencies, about 6 million people, for September of this year are about 1% over what the target ought to be. But from June to December, from June through now, about 3% under, which is good news. That is a key figure because it means that when you take all of the state water project dependent agencies in toto, they are under the limit set by Metropolitan, thereby reducing the pressure on Metropolitan to institute further limits. Okay, the next one is one that we recognize because we're within Callegas. So at the very top for Callegas for September 22, notice that we're 31% over. All of the agencies in the aggregate for Callegas are 31% over, and that's not really good news. From June to now, at the bottom, the second graph below, we're about 15, all the Callegas agencies are 15% over. The third graph deals with, okay, I had Inland Empire, but, okay, I think we skipped over Inland Empire. Let's see. Nope. Apparently it didn't make its way into the chart. But this one, these are the Los Angeles agencies, so we're talking here specifically about DW, Department of Water and Power agencies. Anyway, you see for September of 2022, they're about 2% under the volumetric limits, and on the bottom graph, June to date, it's about it's about flat. We'll skip over the next slide, the Three Valleys slide. And so here's the take-home message. If you look at this graph, you'll see, look at the first three. And this is not our area, but this is California Water Service, Cal-Am, American Water Company, otherwise known as Cal-Am, and then Camarillo Water District, are all well over those volumetric limits. Particularly look at Cal-Am and Cal Water Service, which is not in our area, but Camarillo Water District is about 52% over, while the city of Camarillo is in the green, about 10% under. City of Oxnard is significantly under. But overall, the Callegas agencies are around 9% over, at least on this graph, through about, this says August, was this August? Yeah, August 18th. And I don't have anything more recent on this, I guess. This is the most recent update that we got, so there may be something more recent. I was hoping for something more recent from Callegas, but we just got this today. But you remember, if we go to this draft, that originally Metropolitan was talking about potentially going to even more restrictive water conservation requirements on October 1, but they've put that over until at least November 1. But the discussion beginning on November 1 will be, all right, are we going to go from the 1 day per week to the 0 day outdoor watering? And with a discussion by the end of the year, depending on what our rainfall cycle is like, of whether or not there may be volumetric limits instituted for everyone. So again, think lawns, because of course Metropolitan wants people to save their shrub. We all want people to save their shrubs and the trees. I would say overall we're doing pretty well. I'm sorry that I guess we got the August 18th data and not the more recent data from, or I guess I was hoping there'd be more recent data from Callegas, but apparently we didn't have it. So the next slide. So now I want to talk a little bit about what happened in this last month, and specifically on August 15th at Metropolitan. You remember that we've spoken at some length here about the fact that our area, Callegas and Las Virgenes and elsewhere, we have about 6 million people in what Metropolitan Water District of Southern California calls its SWPD, or State Water Project Dependent Areas. And these are where the restrictions are. These restrictions are not on the other 70% of Metropolitan Water District, and there's a reason for that. But we're in that area, where the 30% area. So beginning in May, with the, well, let's just go for a little bit of background. So this has been, these are board slides from August 18th that I was unable to present to you at our last meeting until we had got this agendized. This was the Metropolitan Water District action on potentially adopting a resolution declaring the crisis with the intent to provide equitable reliability through 3 policy statements. And that term, equitable reliability, you can also call that equitable supply reliability, so that all agencies, all 19 million plus people within Metropolitan, residents within Metropolitan, are treated equitably. Because right now we are not treated equitably, and as the mayor's letter pointed out, we are actually treated at this point as second-class citizens. So we're trying to get that corrected. This is just the backdrop for that, showing the severe, the drought-depleted water supply. So here's the map that gets really interesting. If you look from east to west, the difficulty looking on the west side is that our area on the west side in Ventura County, there's a single point of connection, and it's principally put in, water is principally put into our area through the Sepulveda feeder and other feeder, one big feeder pipe, and it is principally state water project water. And the water that's coming down from the Delta through the State Water Project to the area of Metropolitan Water District. And that serves a lot of the west side agencies. But if you look at this draft, you say, okay, gosh, Metropolitan's got a lot of water from other sources, including Colorado River water, although that's obviously under discussion now, under a lot of pressure as to whether those supplies are going to be able to continue to the extent they have, and there's some indication that they will not be. But also a lot of water that's stored. Metropolitan did have the foresight in the 1990s to build a very large storage reservoir, Diamond Valley, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But what this slide shows is the demands for the west side dependent area principally are coming from state water project water, not from Colorado River water. The point of this is that Metropolitan lacks the infrastructure to move Colorado River water and stored water from the east side of its operations to the west side. And as we talked about this way back in May, in my view, they've really known about this since the 1990s, but it's really come to fruition now, being in the middle of a second major drought cycle, together with the double whammy of only getting a 5% table, what's called a Table A allocation of state water from the Division of Water Resources through the State Water Project. This is what they call the supply constrained area. So that's where the 6 million people are. And if you go to the far left-hand side, that's where we are, in Ventura County and western Ventura County and northwest Los Angeles County and across, somewhat to the east, across San Gabriel and so on. These are the folks, like us, that are in this SWP-dependent area, and like us, have been subject to these emergency water restrictions. So, what happens? Well, we're taking cuts as high as 73%. And that 73% is most evident, for example, in the Las Virgenes Municipal Water District area, which, like Callegas is a wholesaler, that area, unlike us, is almost totally, I think, in fact, totally dependent on state water project because they have no other local water resources. And Mr. Klotzo could correct me if he thinks I've gone wrong, but I think that is the case, particularly for the Las Virgenes area. And I know Mr. Matsuoka is out there as well, could also correct me. But they're in even more precarious shape because of the inability of Met to have the necessary conveyance infrastructure to move water to our area. That is not an idle thought. Because if you remember the graph that I shared with you back a couple of months ago, Callegas, as of April of this year, the Metropolitan Water District, as of April of this year, had approximately 977,000 acre-feet take capacity in its storage reservoirs. Even assuming only a 5% allocation of state water that they could have sent or distributed throughout their area. They couldn't do it. Put it a different way, in 2021, they had about 2.6 million acre-feet in storage, but they couldn't get the water to us because their necessary conveyance infrastructure was not there or is not there. So that puts this whole problem in context. So, and we have a slide saying problem in context. So 6 agencies serving 6 million people have to cut their use of state water project by up to 73%, 35% on average. Now, the city of Camarillo has done great because we have a desalter that is almost ready to come online. We're almost ready to go into testing, as I understand it. But ultimately, the amount of groundwater, or the amount of state water that we in the city of Camarillo are going to take is going to be decreased from anywhere between 55 to 60%, all the way down to 13% when that desalter is fully operational. So we're doing our job. We've spent $66 million plus developing local water supplies. Some of the agencies, particularly in Las Virgenes, they don't have that luxury. They're in a much more difficult position. So we have these painful water restrictions with potential $2,000 per acre foot penalties, and in other areas face lesser requirements. So Metropolitan is now acknowledging that the disparity is unacceptable. Great picture of Messrs. Weymouth, Mulholland, and Whitsett from way back in the 1930s, basically saying, hey, what's ever done for the benefit of the whole, it should be done for the benefit of the whole, and for the benefit of the whole should be shared by all of the parts. So remember that we have a governance board for Metropolitan that is made up of representatives from throughout Southern California, a 38-member governance board, including members from San Diego, LA, et cetera. The problem statement, due to limited infrastructure, Met can't provide the SWP-dependent areas equitable access to water supply and storage assets during severe droughts. This is the first time they have said this publicly. And I want to praise our mayor for his letter of late May. And it took an awful lot of advocacy both with our meetings and other local elected officials' meetings with Callegas and with Met, with senior Met staff individually to get to this point where on August, Met takes this resolution to their board. They have a whole policy background on where they've been and trying to improve on their infrastructure. And they say, hey, their clear intent is to provide equitable reliability access through a balanced combination of infrastructure, storage, et cetera. So they adopted 3 policy statements to do this, including providing an equivalent water supply reliability, reconfiguring and expanding existing portfolio and infrastructure. Let me give you, and then eliminating a disparate water supply. They call it their one water approach. My view of this is that Metropolitan has moved the football, I said this to them in my testimony to their board in August, they've moved the football far down the field. But now we got to get into the end zone. And the projects that actually physically will address this are probably 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 years away. However, one of their committees on the day prior to the board meeting also, with respect to the North Sepulveda Reach feeder, they approved our preliminary design engineering in final form in order to rehabilitate that feeder that's on the west side of the metropolitan service area, which they have to do. They have to rehabilitate that pipeline first before they can additionally put more pressure, more water pressure into it. So they are taking steps. They are taking, I don't want to say concrete steps, they are taking specific steps to start this, but we have to hold their feet to the fire. We have to continue to advocate. And what they're saying is, okay, we're going to have a portfolio of projects. We're going to bring the portfolio plans forward for Met board approval in February of 2023. And that's where we have to be very diligent in advocating to Met through Callegas and with the rest of the local elected officials. You've said, you've acknowledged the problem exists, and that's great. Now you have to take specific steps. In their resolution in August, I actually drafted a red-lined resolution and gave it to them, and so did a couple of other water users, and I asked for more specific timeline, a specific commitment of funds, and a specific commitment of projects, but they didn't want to, in their words, wordsmith their resolution. So they weren't interested in accepting a red line resolution. But they've gone a long way, and we need to continue to monitor this so that we're no longer second-class citizens of Met. And that entire first part of the presentation, I'm hopeful will not have to be repeated, because we'll be in a better position next time around to weather this kind of drought. So there's the action needed in 4 main areas, and the board adopted a resolution committing to regional reliability for all member agencies. And that's it on the presentation. Thanks for giving me the time to make it. Are there any questions?
Yes. This is an agendized item, so we can certainly have questions or any discussion. Anyone? No takers. That was pretty thorough.
We'll give you more, yeah, sorry it was so thorough, but we'll give you more drought task force reports as they move along by month.
Excellent.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kildee, do you mind if we start with you on
Sure.
oral communications updates?
Let's see what I got here. Okay. So I'll start with meetings attended on September 1st. I had a VRSD board meeting. And also that same day, I had a VCOG meeting as well. Those are meetings attended. And had the pleasure of actually going to North Carolina with Mrs. Craven. And we got our award. I think it was, let's see if I can remember, there's a Small Cities North American Project of the Year award. And it was in Charlotte, North Carolina. So we were there. I learned a lot about North Carolina, and a couple things that stood out to me is, number one, and not necessarily in this order, they like barbecue. And number two, they're really into race cars. They love their race cars. They've got, I believe in Charlotte, they have the museum for slot cars. And it was pretty cool because they've got a Mrs. Craven, you make a comment to me.
NASCAR?
NASCAR, that's right, I call it slot car. Old guys like me call it slot car, but NASCAR. And they've got some really cool, like the Wrangler car of the 70s there, and it was really neat seeing those NASCARs there. So they're really into racing there. But it's a really interesting city. It's very clean. I was very impressed with that. And to be there and as one of the recipients of the award was really great. I was really happy that I was able to be there. And also, I did attend the League of California Cities meeting, and it was good time and, always educational and, rekindle some relationships that you've had, over the years here, so that's good. And well attended by members of the council and the planning commission as well. I just want to say, I think it was really great that all the flags were up for 9/11 here. That was very impressive. If you get a chance, drive by there and see them. They were still up as of today. That was really great. And I'm glad, Mr. Tremblay, that you brought up Raylene Manzer. She was quite a lady and a real doer and active in town. And her husband, Bill, as most of us, if not all of us, know, is on the water board as well. And he was an administrator up in the Caneo, and they have a long line of family business, which a lot of them are teachers. So, but she was a remarkable lady, and I'm glad she brought that up, and it's very well deserved to adjourn in her honor. They don't make them like Raylene anymore. So with that, that's all I have.
Thank you very much. Vice Mayor Santangelo?
Thank you. Okay, for meetings attended September 1st, CPA Board of Directors, September 8th, Airport Authority. I'm not going in order. 8/27 was the concert in the park. I did the introduction. On September 2nd, the mayor and I had a business visit at St. John's Hospital, Camarillo, as we've been asked to call it. And September 7th through the 9th, I was also in Long Beach at the League of Cities Conference. I missed the City Employee Appreciation Luncheon on September 6th because I had to work, but please know, city employees, how much we appreciate you. Last night, the 13th, was the Water Conservation Forum here, held out in our garden, which was really lovely, actually, a nice place to have a gathering like that. There were representatives from United, Camarosa, Callegas, and our own Dave Klotzel was there. Really informative, great questions from people that attended, and I got this bucket, and I was going to bring it, and I forgot, but this is very cool. It's a bucket that expands, that you can put into your shower or your bathtub while you're heating up the water. It collects it, and what's nice about this bucket is underneath it's got storage for a spout, so it turns it into a water can. So then you can do that and then walk around and water your plants. So anyway, I just thought, I had never seen that, so very cool. My comments about the League of Cities, I was a little frustrated with some of the content of some of the sessions that I went to. I didn't feel like the description of the sessions really was reflective of what actually was happening in the sessions. Kind of felt like I was being sold stuff. So I hope we can look at some other options for us, because I think that there's so much to learn and there's so many resources out there. And then September 17th, I want to remind everybody that it is Coastal Cleanup from 9 a.m. to 12 noon. Coastal Cleanup includes inland waterways, which means that we have two locations, Mission Oaks Park and Callegas Creek. So come on out. It is fun. It's really interesting what you find in the creek bed sometimes. But come on out and help us clean up. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much. And I will go ahead, and then after me, we'll turn it over to Mrs. Craven. Meetings attended, August 27th, I attended the ribbon cutting of Battery Streak with Mr. Tremblay, as he already mentioned. That's over there off Poncho. They have some really cool technology to where their technology allows you to transfer a greater greater volume faster than what would otherwise traditionally be, what traditional batteries can accommodate. So they have some really cool technology, and they're working at trying to find ways to mainstream that. September 2nd, as Vice Mayor had mentioned, attended a business visit to St. John's Hospital, Camarillo. Thank you. I added that just now when you said that. I still want to call it Pleasant Valley, but St. John's Hospital, Camarillo. And that was really informative. I believe staff sent out a report to the council members letting you know just what was discussed and their issues, topics we discussed, issues, concerns, and the like, how we can better facilitate them and their needs and their employees. September 6th, I attended the city employee luncheon, and that was great. It was still hot, and I was outside, and I didn't like that, but
It was covered.
it was covered, so I ain't complaining. September 8th, Airport Authority with Vice Mayor, and then also September 8th through the 9th, attended the Long Beach League of Cities conference. I will echo the Vice Mayor's, some of the Vice Mayor's frustrations, and I'm going to fill out their survey and not be so kind. They take some what otherwise would be really great topics, really broad topics, and what they do, though, is they look, in terms of solutions, they look at a very, very narrow sliver of potential solutions, as opposed to kind of giving you really helping educate you on the depth of that issue and the matter, and helping you, because not all cities and communities are the same. We're all of different sizes, different makeups, and whatnot. They don't really lay out a lot of options. They kind of, it's usually one person at the podium, although I'll say when they have a little, a little gallery that of people, a panel, it's a little bit more informative because you can get multiple different points of view. But usually when it's one speaker, it does come, especially when that speaker is associated with some sort of consulting agency or company that has to make money, then you get more of a sales pitch. And obviously the solution is the one in which they just happen to offer. Which is oftentimes, at least for us, I can say, is oftentimes not the solution we're looking for. Maybe for others, but usually it's not ours. But otherwise, it's just two great broad topics, but too narrowly focused in terms of what they think the solution might be. So I wish I think they've progressively been getting worse. Honestly, the first one, and maybe it's because I've been doing this for 4 years in Charlotte, I'm sure can opine on this, because you've been going to them for a lot longer than I have. But in my own opinion, they seem to have gotten worse in, just say, the last 4 years. But that is everything I attended. I just want to throw in a pitch. League of Women Voters is having their candidates forum. We are coming into election time. They're having kind of a Zoom-like web stream forum. So that's going to be September 20th. They're going to cover all 3 districts that are up for election, District 5 at 7 p.m. and Districts 1 and 2 at 8 p.m. And it is just a forum. It's going to be kind of a question and answer. And that can be, you can go to lwvventuracounty.org. There'll be a link. So for those in TV land that are interested in watching or want to submit a question, please by all means engage, submit a question. Or at the very least, watch it and see the slate of candidates and what everyone's got to say. So I think that's really important. Make an informed decision more than anything, make an informed decision. With that, Mrs. Craven, I'm going to turn it over to you and our city information.
I've got 5
historical.
minutes until we probably need to go into a long session, and I'm going to take longer than that. Do you want me to start and then continue, or how do you want me to do it?
I don't know. Go ahead.
Okay. Let me start with the league. I did not attend the league meeting because I'm not going to be on the city council next year, and I thought it wouldn't be right for me to spend the city's money to do that. However, I've not attended a lot of other meetings because I was always dissatisfied. My take in what they had on the past was a little bit different in what you're reporting. So maybe they are reporting some solutions now. I used to say they'd have a panel of 5 people. Each of those people would define what the problem was. If you went to the session, you already knew what the problem was. You didn't need 5 people to tell you what the problem was, but nobody ever gave you a solution. So if they're giving you a very narrow solution or 5 different ones, they're doing better than they used to do. That's all I'll say about the league meetings. I attended our policy committee meeting on the 25th. I did join Mr. Klotzel and Mr. Matsuga and Mr. Kildee at the American Public Works Association in Charlotte. And this Charlotte doesn't mean me, it means where we were. And so anyway, we did receive the big award for a project by a city under 75,000 people. It was our top award. It's a big, big deal to have won that. This is nationwide, and I was very proud to have been there. And I guess our award is around here someplace. I've not seen it. They handed us a fake. They sent the real one here to Camarillo, so maybe sometime it'll be out so we can all see it. I attended the RDP meeting, which was a report by Keith Freitas, the Director of Airports. It was very interesting. It was similar to the one here that he gave to the city of Camarillo a while ago. But again, he repeated that the County of Ventura is not interested in scheduled cargo or passenger flights. So I think that's very good. The more places I hear him say that, the happier and more comfortable I am. One of the things that RDP 21 has lobbied for many years was a simulator so that the Air National Guard 146th Wing could train other Air National Guard units in the C-130Js and also some other things that they do out there. They finally got the money. The simulator contract is being signed this week, and the groundbreaking will be in the spring. So that's another thing we lobbied for that we got. And finally, they want everybody to know, the Port of Hueneme wants everybody to know that the Banana Fest will be from 10 to 6 at the port on the 26th and 27th of this month. I also attended the Contract Cities Legislative Committee today, and we've talked about the bills. I won't tell you. I think that a final of all the bills that we supported or opposed will be sent to all of us in a council agenda packet sometime, so I'll let you read that there. Judy Beliciano is a busy woman. So she is married to Greg Beliciano, who used to be a custodian here at City Hall and is now a crossing guard. And I talked to her about something different. I talked to her about a program she set up at the animal shelter once she got grandchildren that she talked to you about. She realized she couldn't do as much volunteering at the animal shelter as she used to do. So she did something, organized this, and they're doing it on weekends. And they have a monthly schedule. It's at, there are 2 places where you can get information about it. You can get it from the Ventura County Animal Shelter website, or you can get it from a Facebook site called Rescue Readers. And so what this is for, it's similar to a program we have at the library, where kids go and read, that's called Pause for Reading, they read to dogs. Well, this is a little bit different. You can read to dogs, cats, bunnies, and so there are more animals, more kids can read every once in a while, and I don't know if it's 10 minutes or 15 minutes, I've forgotten. You switch animals that you're reading to, but it isn't like you run out of animals, so there's a big long line of kids, which is a problem we've had at the library. And the kids then have to rotate, and 3 or 4, maybe 8 more can read. So this is a good program. It gives younger children a chance to read out loud. They're not being corrected. They're getting lots of practice reading, and it gives animals a chance to have some individualized attention there. They can lean up against their cages or whatever it is. The ages are 4 to 14. And you can go onto the website or the Facebook page called Rescue Readers, and you can find out. Wasn't able to get the schedule for this fall. It's starting the last week of September, but it had been on Saturday from 9:45 to 11, the last week of every month, and the first 3 weeks of every month, it was on Sundays from 9:45 to 11. Anyway, it's an exciting program to me because I know I watched the program at the library, and not having enough animals disappointed a lot of kids. So this is something that everybody can do. And it's also on a weekend when a parent can go with the child, and more kids can get there. I, too, was going to ask to adjourn, or help me with a word. Yeah, adjourn, right. Too many words here. In honor of Raylene Manzer, and here is the obituary. Finally is the history lesson, and this time, let me say this, I'm running out of things. I've got one more for the last time, and that will be November. And I've got some others that might or might not be good, but if anybody is interested in something that I haven't covered, let me know, and I will dig it up. So this time it's on the Camarillo Ranch House and Barn, and not necessarily the whole ranch. Juan and Martina Camarillo were married in 1840 and lived in Ventura. In 1876, he bought Rancho Callegas, which measured just under 10,000 acres. It ran from the top of the mountains on the east to the area of Lewis Road on the west, and from the northern edge of what we now know as St. John's Cemetery all the way over, and then down below the 101 freeway. It was mostly a cattle ranch at the time. When Juan died in 1880, his oldest son, 16-year-old Adolfo, took over ranch operations. Adolfo married Isabel Menchaca in 1888, and they soon began a family. In 1891, Martina deeded the ranch to her 2 sons, Adolfo and Juan Jr. And the following year, Adolfo hired architects to build the 3-story, 6,000 square foot, 14-room Queen Anne-style house where Adolfo and Isabel raised their 7 children. The LA Times reported that when their mother died 10 years later in 1898, that Martina's daughters, who were each bequeathed $5 in the will, challenged both the deed and the will in court. The Times later reported that there was a settlement, and Adolfo continued farming. He was known as an innovative farmer with new crops such as soybeans, walnuts, black-eyed peas, and citrus. He employed up to 700 ranch hands and became one of the wealthiest landowners in the county. Both he and his brother generously donated land and money whenever they saw a need. The ranch house was the center of the community. Huge fiestas were thrown for birthdays, holidays, whenever a dignitary visited the area or when a significant event arose. Tables for as many as 750 people were set up in the yards, and Adolfo and Isabel entertained the guests for each event. Estate taxes were tremendous after Adolfo died. In the early 1960s, much of the land was sold, slowly developing into industrial parks and residential areas, but the family kept about 100 acres, including the ranch house. Carmen, Adolfo and Isabel's youngest daughter, married Roy Jones. Their house was on the property, but they had another house on the property. It was called Carmen's house. It was a little pink house. But they could not keep up with the repairs and maintenance of the aging ranch house, so it was turned over to the Augustinian order in 1996. They turned it into a dormitory for 7 to 8 priests who lived, ate, and prayed there, but attended classes at St. John's Seminary. By 1973, the Augustinians moved to San Francisco, and by that time the house was in total disrepair, according to one of the priests who stayed there. In 1977, Bert Lamb, a great-grandson of Adolfo and Isabel, moved his family in. They often licensed it for movie, television, and ad shoots. Then in 1998, the remaining land was sold to Centex Industrial Development Corporation for a business park. City Manager Bill Little and Planning Director Tony Bowden saved the house by placing a condition of development on the project that required 4.4 acres of land, including the house, to be deeded to the city for historical, cultural, and recreational purposes. They also required the mule barn to be retained, and the developer was required to assist the city in moving it behind the house to a location where another barn had fallen. It also allowed them to save the White Horse stables. Recognizing that it would not be habitable until a great deal of work was done, and hoping to recoup some of the costs through rentals for events while still having it open to the public, the City Council decided to form the Camarillo Ranch Foundation as a 501c3 nonprofit corporation to preserve, restore, and maintain the Camarillo Ranch as an historic site, to transform it into a focal point of the community for education, enrichment, and enjoyment, and to exhibit our diverse history and culture. The city was to take care of the exterior of the house, while the Ranch Foundation was to restore and maintain the interior and the grounds. What a project that was. Electrical wiring was about a century old. Plumbing had problems. The roof leaked. The house needed shoring up. The Augustinians had converted an upstairs back bedroom into a communal shower by placing sheet metal against the walls and over the floor. You should have seen the mold on the walls and floors when that was removed. The front porch was directly on the ground. It was unstable. The railing was falling apart. The interior? Well, every time a movie or TV show came in, the interior was repainted and the flooring was changed as needed. So decor was eclectic. Wherever you turned, there was so much to do. Each council member, going back to the Ranch Foundation, each council member named 3 members of the first Ranch Foundation board. There were 2 former city council members, people with great ideas, a great-granddaughter of Adolfo, and a descendant of the former ranch manager, both of whom were vitally interested in making sure the integrity of the ranch was kept. The board considered itself a working board, and even though contractors and architects were hired to provide historic preservation, rehabilitation to the house, board members rolled up their sleeves, climbed up ladders, and worked to keep costs down. Between 1999 and 2000, the city and the foundation worked together to complete the $1.5 million project. State Senator Kathy Wright secured a $425,000 state grant for the interior, Additionally, each room was assigned a price, and residents bought rooms where plaques of recognition still hang. The city chipped in about $500,000. What was done? The house was shored up, the roof was replaced, seismic work was made, termites were treated, and the exterior was painted. The porch was removed, a foundation was laid, and new porch built. A carpenter duplicated the original balusters so the exterior looked, those are the spindles on the railing, the exterior looked original. Inside, wiring was replaced, board members removed layer after layer of wallpaper and paint, and in a closet, they found the original wallpaper. The original company reproduced it for the dining room and parlor walls. The older refrigerator, which takes up an entire room, was repaired. Floors were sanded and redone. All of those coats of paint from the TV and movie sets were removed. Woodwork, including the parlor stairway, was sanded down to bare wood and refinished. By the time of the grand opening, there was nothing inside that had not been removed, restored, or replaced. Two of Adolfo and Isabel's granddaughters, Carmelita Nicholson and Geraldine Fitzgerald, were enlisted for advice and guidance. The first and second stories were redone, but the third floor still has not been touched. Outside, the east and west gardens were readied for weddings to raise money for future maintenance. A state arborist drove by on the 101 when the Norfolk Island pine caught his eye. He stopped and measured, and we soon received certificates that the Norfolk Island pine and the bunya bunya tree are the tallest in the state. Additionally, the Morton Bay fig tree is second in height, only to one in Santa Barbara. These trees were planted in 1892 and still adorn the grounds. Groundskeeping was transferred to the city landscape crews during a reorganization of functions in late 2019. And I'm going to add, I think they're doing a marvelous job out there. One project was the Shrine of Our Lady of Guadalupe, which was in disrepair, but was still a place where family members and the Augustinians had meditated and prayed. Bernie and Rita Moraga paid for the restoration in honor of her father, Mike Loza. It's still there, but few walk around the fountain behind the hedge to the east of the gazebo. One day, Don and Katie Wanch left Mass at St. Mary Magdalene Chapel during seismic work. Katie spied the copper cupola in the trash and asked about it. She stood guard so the dumpster could not be emptied while Don went and found somebody to haul it to the ranch. Milton Bud Daly agreed to pay for a gazebo to be built under the cupola, which is now the highlight of the East Garden. It wasn't until 2008 when work began on the mule barn. The city itself paid for those improvements. After the floor was poured, it was re-roofed, restrooms, a kitchen, and storage space were carved out, lighting and plumbing were added, and it was brought up to building and fire codes so that the Ranch Foundation could rent it out for events. Larry Davis was the city's point person on that. Two main contracts came to about $700,000, which did not include pouring the floor or the city's share of moving the barn. If I remember correctly, it was nearly $1 million to renovate the barn. But it is now part of a wonderful historic park of the cities, and it will remain as an educational and cultural center for generations to come. And I have a full list of sources.
Thank you very much.
That's it.
I think people underestimate Adolfo Camarillo and what a smart businessman he was and how innovative he was for his time. There's just stories upon stories, and I encourage anyone to do research on Adolfo Camarillo.
There's a lot to read.
Yeah. All right, with that, we are going to recess back into closed session, and we will be back at 7 o'clock for nothing but public comments. All right? At this time, we'll stand in recess. All right, we got everyone, all right. We are going to reconvene the meeting of the Camarillo City Council. We have no presentations, we only have public comments. Brownie points for all those who stayed to this point. So we're going to take public comments. I have one public comment card. Spencer Ritchie? And Spencer, I think you already know the rules. You've spoken
Yeah.
before. 3 minutes, and then I'll ask you to conclude your comments after 3.
Okay, thank you. All right. So I think the city mounted a woefully inadequate response towards the recent extreme heat wave over Labor Day weekend. So under the conditions we were in, which was brutal temperatures lasting well into the night, if you recall, we also had warnings that we all had to conserve electricity at home from 4 until at least 9 p.m. And third, being that we have now more than 70,000 people in the city of Camarillo alone who are subject to these. Ideally, the wise thing to do would have had to had at least the library and the community room at the police station open, and then try to get more cooling centers open and keep them open from like 10 a.m. to 9 p.m., long enough to cover all the hot parts of the day and cover all the time that people were supposed to be conserving electricity at home, even on Labor Day itself. Unfortunately, that was not what happened. What actually happened was, again, as we recall, the library and community center complex were all open only the regular hours. And then the only cooling center for a city of, again, more than 70,000 people on Labor Day weekend, on Labor Day itself, was the community room at the police station. And that was only from 11 a.m. to 5 o'clock p.m. This was not wise for a few reasons. For one reason, not everyone in Camarillo can afford to go to the movies or go out to eat or go to the mall or whatever for multiple nights in a row during a brutal heat wave like we had over Memorial Day weekend. Another thing about Camarillo is that there's a lot of old people living here. Elderly people are incredibly vulnerable to the heat. And honestly, since climate change means that we'll be getting more and more brutal heat waves like this in the future, we are running the risk of killing people in Camarillo by not having more free cooling centers open that, like seniors who are cash-strapped can go to. And honestly, I'd rather not the city have blood on its hands this way.
All right, thank you very much, Spencer.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
You too. Alan Minster? Come on up. You're a new face here, so I'll just repeat the rules really quick. You have a clock under you. You have a clock under me. Start at 3 minutes. It'll count down. At 1 minute, you'll hear a beep, and it'll turn yellow. Don't let that, pause you. You keep going, and then at 0, I'll just ask you to conclude your comments.
Okay, great. I'll just introduce myself. I'm Alan Minster. My family and I have lived in Camarillo since the early 70s. I really respect and appreciate the fiscal responsibility of the council, first of all, I'd like to say. My question's simple. With the water situation, has this, and I'm not into politics and so forth, so I'm really not aware of what's going on a lot of times. That's why I'm here this evening. I want to get more involved. Has the city looked at any possibility of desalinization, perhaps with other cities, perhaps with Magoo, whatever? And that's my question.
Thank you very much. It's actually it's one I can probably provide a really quick answer to. I like to. We do have a desalination plant, a groundwater desal plant. It's off of Lewis Road. It's, construction is effectively done. They're about, and Dave Klotzel can probably give a quick status update. And actually, I will ask Dave to give us a quick status update. I think a comment was made earlier that we might start testing. Either we're in testing or we're about to initiate testing.
Correct. Yeah, we've continued to be testing ever since the plant was constructed and completed. All the various components have been tested and checked out. What we're headed into is the final test of the whole thing altogether, including injection of the chemicals and testing the outcome of running it through the reverse osmosis membranes. We don't install the membranes until we get to that point, because if they foul, they're very expensive. So we've been in the testing phase for longer than what we anticipated, although it's resulted in what it's designed to do is show any, I would like to call it fine tuning that's needed for this investment that we have in the plant. That's what's been going on, is fine tuning. And our best guess at this point is that we can enter into this final testing stage likely through the month of October. Again, I can't put a definite date on it because it all hinges on obtaining the final permit from the state to then be able to distribute that water for sale to our customers. So that's where we are now.
And just a point of clarification or question of clarification on our investment. Once this is up and operating at full capacity, it's our understanding it should provide upwards near, if not excess to 80% of Camarillo water customers' regular water usage.
Correct.
Between it and all of the groundwater.
Transitioning to, right.
Local source.
Local sources existing and then treated groundwater, upwards of 80% versus right now we're at about 40% groundwater, local water. Yes, and Councilmember Tremblay has indicated even possibly to only a 13% reliance on imported water. Those are based on some pretty far out projections on demand, and with all intents are to get there. It will take some time to reach that. And I would like to clarify, excellent question from the public. It sounded like it may be a little bit more attached to ocean desalination, is what I heard. And that's a totally different animal than what we are dealing with. Just for clarification, our desalter project is treating brackish groundwater. We have a mound of unusable brackish groundwater that we're treating with reverse osmosis. Very similar technology, but the saltiness, the brackish, is much less than seawater. Seawater's order of magnitude more, and quite a bit more expensive to treat. So while there haven't been really anything in place right now moving towards ocean desal within Ventura County, but that is a possibility for the future.
So different source, same process, it would be same result. An alternative drinking source of water.
Correct, and extremely expensive.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I had one question of staff, and I'm not sure, I'm going to put someone on the spot here. I don't know if anyone can answer. Do we have a count as to how many people attended or came to our cooling center over, while it was open?
Well, the cooling center was well-staffed by our CERT team, so it was, we quickly were able to get our CERT team out there. We had about 6 members of the community join us. And the certs were very effective in calling those that are listed on the vulnerable list. So we made over 90 contacts with our seniors and other members of our community that are listed to ensure of their safety, and to bring them to the CERT center if we needed to, or to remind them that not the CERT center, the cooling center, and to remind them that it is open. So we had good communications, and 6 was a good turnout. Sometimes we're not getting people that do come to the cooling center, but we were glad to have it open.
We already identified a certain set of people that were already vulnerable to the heat, and we were proactively reaching out to them to make sure they were okay.
Yes, and we proactively update that list. So our CERT team, that's one of the duties that they have, is to continue communications with our vulnerable population, our seniors, throughout the community, to update that list and make sure that everyone's getting on it.
Thank you very much. Anything else? All right, with that, we're not done with our closed session, so we are going to recess back into closed session, but when we do adjourn, we will adjourn in the memory of Raylene Manzer. So thank you very much.